Hello, and welcome to the Far From Normal Radio Show. I am Jay Moss, your host, and I would like to welcome in at this time my co-host, Mr. Bud Vino. Bud, how are you doing this evening?
Yo, and yo, my brother from another mother, Jay Money Moss. Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. Here we go again, White Snake. With us tonight, as always, looking ready, and ding dong, someone else just joined us too, but first, from Florida, the one, the only, King of Sting, Master of Disaster. She's fired up tonight. Jesse Weiner, how you doing tonight?
Hey guys, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Awesome.
Good. Awesome.
And another
Jay,
participant. Yeah, our other participant that we always have, the fourth wheel of the four horsemen here, Mr. Pete McNeil. How are you doing?
Doing awesome, everybody. Excited to be on tonight. Ready to rock and roll and ready to do this, man. I'm excited. Been excited all day.
Awesome. We are coming in to this doing somewhat of a crossover show tonight, guys. So you see some pictures here that you're very familiar with in this movement. Well, they come from Kirk's Law Corner. Awesome people. And they have an amazing show on Monday nights, doing some great stuff. So without further ado, number one, we would like to go ahead and thank Mr. John Gentry for his time coming on the program. Thank you, sir, so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Jay, thank you for having me on. I look forward to sharing some things with the folks out there watching tonight and later on when the video gets posted, and try to help find a way to demand reform in this broken system. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I know that my co-host also would like to thank you for your time, because I know that your time is precious. By looking at that paperwork behind you there, it's unrealistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Gentry, thanks for coming on. I'm excited. Your name, obviously, I've seen quite a bit, and even in the pre-show, you were already given a lot of information. I know it's going to be beneficial and useful to a lot of people out there and empowering. So thanks for coming on, as Jay said. Thank you.
Thanks, bud.
Awesome. So definitely want to ask you, Kirk's Law Corner is doing some amazing things with yourself, Chris Hallett, Kirk Pendergrass. I just love the fact that you guys have such a good blend with law, because it's a very strange subject, because we're not used to it, and so it seems almost cut and dry that most of these laws that we deal with within the movement should be cut and dry, and they should be constitutional laws. Why do you think that a lot of these things that are passing through, or how they're reacting or acting in court, is rather unconstitutional?
It started, much of it started coming about as a result of when 42 USC Section 1983, 88 and through 86 was enacted. And Congress saw there was a huge problem in the state courts, and people were being harassed. Their rights are being violated under color of law. And so Congress went and enacted 42 USC 1983. And when that was being discussed in the legislature, as an example, Senator Perry made the statement, sheriffs having eyes to see not, judges having ears to hear not. And because the states are unwilling to provide what's the rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution, or they're in league with those who would abrogate rights, we have to provide what they have been unable to provide for themselves. And so they enacted 1983 as a means for us to enforce our right of due process. So the states came in, and if you'd bring up, if you would share a document, if you got a moment to bring that up.
Yep, absolutely. Here, let me go ahead and.
They'll give you an idea of some of the statutes that the states have put out there to protect themselves and to protect the bad actors in the states, to prevent lawsuits against them. So if you take a look at this first one, this is Tennessee code, but this crap is all over the country. All of the states have done similar statutes like this one. So this one is governmental. So when you try to sue a judge for violating your rights, if you sue him in his personal capacity, they say, oh, judicial immunity, you can't sue him. You sue him in his official capacity, and they say, oh, sovereign immunity extends to him from the state. Can't sue him there either. You try to sue the state, and the state says, oh, sovereign immunity, you can't sue us. And now they've come in Tennessee, and they enacted this governmental entities to close the loop so that you can't enforce your right of due process. So if you read the title of this, removal of immunity for injury caused by negligent act or omissions, sounds good, but then they say exceptions. And this next paragraph after this really kind of drives this home about the tricky lawyer language. So it says immunities from suit of all governmental entities is removed. So when immunity is removed, then you can sue them. Right? They're taking away their state sovereign immunity and saying you can sue them. But then they come in and they say, except if the injury arises out of. And if you look at the first subparagraph, it says exercise or performance or failure to exercise or perform a discretionary function, whether or not discretion is abused. So who does that protect? That protects the judicial oversight agencies that through gross negligence and aiding and abetting rights and federal law and violations, it protects them. And it says, oh, you can't sue the judicial oversight agency. Get this next one. False imprisonment pursuant to a minimus from a court. What's that? Well, that's when they say, oh, he's in contempt of court, go pick him up. False arrest, malicious prosecution, intentional trespass, abuse of process, libel, slander, deceit, interference with contract rights, infliction of mental anguish, right of privacy, or civil rights. It's like, good grief, why didn't you guys throw murder in there too and grant yourself immunity for that? Because you got everything else in there just about. That law is repugnant to the Constitution. The state has no authority to grant immunity for civil rights violations. And this is nothing more than the state protecting bad actors. Governmental entities, Jay, do governmental entities do false arrest? No. That's bad actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not governmental entities. Violating civil rights, that's not governmental entities, that's bad actors.
Yep.
This is the state protecting the bad actors and closing the loop so that there's no way to enforce your rights, particularly a right of due process. Is stopped here. Scroll down to the next statute. This one blows my mind. Keep going down to the next one, next appendix. So here, deponents exempt from subpoena to trial, but subject to subpoena to deposition. This law is nothing more than the state denying due process. The Supreme Court has stated in multiple cases that a basic right of due process is to confront adverse witness testimony. So if you scroll down a little bit more, so what this law started out was, so it says officer of the United States, an officer of the state. And what this law was originally set up for was to stop harassment of state legislators and to say, you can't subpoena a legislator to trial when Congress is in session, which is reasonable. They need to go vote on bills. That was reasonable. But the bad actors with the state, and what's happened here is the bar has infiltrated our state legislatures, and we've lost that check and balance. And so the bar, as members of the bar and also as members of the state legislature, they're creating immunities, they're stacking the deck in their favor. And so they added to this practicing physician assistants. You'll see that in subparagraph 6. Advanced registered nurse, psychologist, senior psychological examiner, chiropractor, dentist, or attorney. So you cannot subpoena these guys to trial and cross-examine them, but they are subject to deposition testimony.
Right.
What that does is that sets the stage for economically disadvantaged people to not be able to cross-examine them. economically disadvantaged people are not going to know how to do deposition. They're not going to know how to depose somebody. And if they did, they can't afford to set that up.
Right.
And so what you end up with is one of these persons that are in league with the state, wrongfully taking your children, wrongfully declaring you unfit without any supporting evidence, making unsupported allegations, and you don't get to cross-examine them. Recently in Tennessee, HB 2 something, I don't remember the recent bill, they added licensed clinical social workers to this thing. And so now you can't subpoena them to trial. How are you supposed to have a right of due process when you can't cross-examine? It's crazy. Scroll down to the next one. So this next one, and this was particularly in response to 42 USC 1983. So personal tort actions against certain professionals, and the certain professionals in here, guess who they are? Attorneys. And also they added CPAs, because CPAs are doing valuations now in family court. And so I'm a CPA, by the way. And so I'm quite familiar with the obligations of a certified public accountant. But they exempted CPAs and attorneys, certain professionals. When they say certain professionals, that right there tells you that that's a violation, and Chris can tell you that this is a violation of the emoluments clause because they're granting privilege to certain professionals. What about other professionals? So you take, when you consider what a professional is, there's three main professions: medicine, law, and accountancy. Those are the three professions. And why are they professions? So doctors, obviously, they have public trust. They're required to attain a certain level of education, and they're required to be licensed. So that's the three elements of a profession: licensure, education, and certification or qualification or licensure by the state. Attorneys have the same thing. They have an education standard. They have to get licensed by the state, admitted to the bar, and they're in positions of public trust. Accountancy is the same thing. We have to go through a certain amount of education, obtain a certain amount of hours. We're licensed. We take a CPA exam, which, by the way, is harder than the bar. I'll say that as an accountant. The bar is much easier than the CPA exam, I think. And CPAs are in a position of public trust. The entire economy of this country depends upon the opinions of certified public accountants certifying that the financial statements of all of the companies traded on the exchanges are materially correct. So that's a big part of the public trust with CPAs. So when they come in here and say CPAs and attorneys are granted these immunities that are in the statute, that's unfair to doctors. And it's a violation of the equal protection. Doctors should have the same statute of limitations as attorneys and CPAs. Does that make sense to you, Jay?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense to me.
And it's also, and I learned this from Chris. Chris has done such great work around the emoluments clause. That's an emolument. That's a special privilege because it's not granted to the medical profession. When they say certain professionals, that's in violation of the emoluments clause.
Correct.
Violation of the equal protection clause. This is just some of them. Our state statutes are littered with crap like this. And who's going to challenge it? Legal professionals are not going to challenge this. The only people that are challenging it are people like us saying, really, you false arrest, malicious prosecution, you're immune. Civil rights violations, you're immune. Really, we cannot depose people? That's crazy. There's one more here. Let me show you this last one. This one was specifically enacted to address 42 USC 1983. So it says I'm sorry, this is not it. This is the one about medical practitioners. Keep going down.
I think that's all there.
Did we? I think maybe we already went over the one where they set the statute of limitations on civil rights. I'm sorry, got ahead of myself or got behind myself. So these are just some clear-cut examples of how the state corruption and just stacking the cards so that you have no means to enforce your rights in courts. There's many more out there. There's one that judges, if you sue them in the personal capacity, and they win against you, and they always win because the state federal courts will not enforce the Constitution. They say you owe them attorney fees. Now, typically what will happen is you'll sue a judge in his personal capacity and the state attorney general will represent them. When the state attorney general represents them, it doesn't cost them anything, right? But what they said in this statute in Tennessee, they said, well, you have to pay their attorney fees at market rate. Now, the attorney general's office has their underlings, and these guys make like $80,000, $150,000, coming out of school. They're not making a lot of money. That's like 36 to like 70, 80 bucks an hour. But they say, no, you're going to pay attorney fees at market rate. You're going to pay it $250 to $600 an hour, depending on what the market rate is, even though it only costs the state 80 bucks. And the judge didn't pay the state attorney general to represent him. And that, I think, is extortion under color of law. It's being deprived of property without due process, without trial by jury. And I think that's unconstitutional. And that's certainly also an emolument because everybody else doesn't get that same privilege, just judges.
Right. That's absolutely correct. And so my thought is if there's unconstitutional laws going on, such as in your case, because it looks like you're going to be going before the Supreme Court asking for a remedy based on 3 criteria. So I want you to talk about that, and that's very important.
Thank you for asking that, because this is the point I want to touch on. When you're suing a judge, you're always going to be dismissed, and the district courts and the circuit courts are going to affirm those dismissals under Rooker-Feldman, sovereign immunity, judicial immunity, and they're going to say, hey, you can't sue them. You can't enforce your right of due process. Mm-hmm. So how to strengthen your case is you say, these laws remove deterrent. These laws allow them to perpetrate crimes against me. And so you challenge these laws in your state and you attach them to your complaint with the state as a respondent or as a defendant in the case. And you say, it's because of these laws that all this crap happened to me. Now, what that does, if you're just suing the judge and the district court and the circuit court says, Rooker-Feldman, sovereign immunity, judicial immunity, then what will happen in the Supreme Court is they say, it's just court error. We don't care about that crap. We don't want to hear it. And they deny you your petition for writ of certiorari in the Supreme Court. Right. But now you include these unconstitutional state statutes. The Supreme Court, I think, has to hear that because that's the primary jurisdiction of the United States Supreme Court, is to consider whether state statutes are constitutional or not. That was the whole original purpose, I think, of the United States Supreme Court. And there's plenty of documentation, plenty of precedents that's the primary jurisdiction. Now, you had asked about 3 causes of action, and I'm going to kind of plug this out there. We need reform. There's no doubt our legal system is broken. There's no doubt children are being taken wrongfully. There's no doubt that we have no right of due process. And so what we're working on, and for the viewers out there, if you want reform, I want you to join us in this action as co-plaintiffs. And we're going to take it to the United States Supreme Court as an original jurisdiction case. We're not going to the state. We're not going to district court or circuit courts. We're going straight to the United States Supreme Court. And we're saying all of these laws, and every state has them, these laws are unconstitutional. They protect corruption. We want these laws made null and void. They never should have found their way onto the books. And I think the Supreme Court has to hear that. The second thing that we're asking for is some means to enforce our right of due process. So, okay, sovereign immunity, judicial immunity, Rooker-Feldman, let's assume that those are valid and legal arguments, which in many cases they're not. But let's say that they are. Okay, how are we supposed to enforce our right of due process? We can't. It's been usurped. We have no means to enforce that right. So we're going to ask the Supreme Court to order the states to provide some way to address grievances for due process violations. I think that's pretty reasonable. And this is the number one thing that I want is our federal constitution and most state constitutions guarantee a right to a trial by jury. We are denied that right in administrative or court or admiralty courts. We do not have a right to a trial by jury, which is against both state and federal constitutions. We cannot ask for a trial by jury in every case. That is too burdensome on society. We cannot pull people out of their jobs to perform jury duty. That's too big a burden. But what we can do is we can say, whenever a complaint is filed, whether you're defendant or plaintiff, you're handed a piece of paper. And I want the Supreme Court to order the states to do that, to hand a piece of paper to the litigant and say, these are your rights. And one of them is, when you feel that you're not getting a fair hearing and your rights are being violated, you say time out. I want all orders stayed. I believe I'm not being provided a fair hearing here, and I would like a jury assembled, and we can come back and review the judge's orders. And I think that's going to stop a lot of the crap that's going on right now. And the last thing I want, there's an auditor's compilation report. I did it for Chris. He filed it into United States Congress several months back. And it shows that 100% of complaints against judges are dismissed. 100% of complaints by non-legal professionals are dismissed. So, okay, if you guys aren't going to oversee yourselves, then we want to bring that to a jury and have the jury decide whether the judge violated the canons under the judicial codes of conduct, or if they violated my civil rights, and let a jury decide those things. And this is how I want to return power to the people, to the consent of the governed, is to say, no, the judiciary is not responsible. Thomas Jefferson said in 1821 that the germ of destruction lies in the judiciary, an irresponsible body, working like gravity by night and by day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, until all of the checks and balances have gone away, and we are being subjected to a government that is as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. He predicted it in 1821, and that's where we are today. We're right back to the same grievances that we declared our independence from England, the same mock trials, the same officers eating out our substance, all the guardian ad litems that are appointed that we have to pay for, all of the therapists and caseworkers that we have to pay for. That's all in violation of the Emoluments Clause. That's officers eating out our substance. And we're just right back where we started.
That's exactly right. So to sum a little bit of this up about what John is saying is a U.S. Supreme Court case in which he wants everyone that he can to be co-plaintiffs in this case, and asks the Supreme Court for three things: trial by jury, due process, and judicial accountability. Those seem to be the biggest things that I think that we deal with, and you're absolutely right. So 100%, I think it's amazing that you're doing that.
Yeah, and that redress that we want, there's no legislation that has to be enacted. The process for assembling juries is already there. This is like stupid simple. It's like so easy to set up and make happen. The only thing we need is the Supreme Court to order the states to provide those basic rights that are guaranteed in our Constitution, and to follow the process the way our founding fathers set it up for us. So it's stupid. Why wouldn't you want to do those things? The only reason you wouldn't want to do those things is because you're corrupt. That's the only reason you wouldn't want to do it. So that's what we're going to ask them to do. I hope the viewers out there My name is John Gentry. You can find me on social media. You can find us through Kirk's Law Corner. You can find us through eClaws. Find us through the Far From Normal radio show, and get in contact with us and add your voice and be heard in the United States Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Well, that sounds really awesome, and I'm sure when I do my road trip this summer, I'm going to be seeing both of you.
I hope so.
Chris already knows. I got scheduled pencil time in with him.
You betcha.
Yep. I'm bringing in Chris
Got the pencil.
here. Well, now, John, I know that you probably went over there to the Nancy Schaefer rally, so I'm going to give you a little time on the update on that. How did everything go down there?
Man, the speakers down there were just incredible. I learned so much. Probably the biggest impact for me was the tragedy of the stories that I heard, of just, children wrongfully taken, people's lives destroyed. It was very emotional in that way. And Nancy Schaefer's work, and for the viewers out there, if you're not familiar with her, look her up. She was doing a lot of work around Title IV incentives to the states, and that's where the big problem lies with children being wrongfully taken. The states are taking children to balance their books. Every time a child is taken, it's worth about $100,000 to the state, and so they're incentivized. They give out. Nancy was saying, and I didn't know this. I learned this down in Georgia, but Nancy was saying that the social workers are getting like $3,000 bonuses for taking the child away from a parent and placing them in foster care or adoptive care. And so the states are bonusing their employees to take children away. And when you do something like that, that just encourages people to wrongfully take children. You get a couple bad social workers and they get 2 or 3 kids a month, $6,000, $9,000 bonus. Man, that's just like big time incentives for wrong things to happen. And so Nancy was fighting out against that before we lost her. And she did such incredible work to try to fight for families, to say, don't take them away from the family and put them in foster care when there's an aunt or uncle or somebody, a grandparent that can take care of their children. Don't place them with the state. And many times when these children are placed with the state, they're put in pedophile rings. They're abused in foster care. And God, some of the stories down there, Jay, it broke my heart, man.
Yeah.
And this stuff has got to stop. It's just got to stop.
Yep, that's absolutely the case. And I think that what you're doing and putting together some of these solutions will definitely help that. I think the stuff that Chris is putting together is amazing solutions on what we can do and take action, because we all go through some of those prolific stages in this movement where you come in and some people hit what they call the rock bottom moment, and sometimes the rock bottom moment is on the way back up. It's just different for everybody in that rock bottom moment, but you all hit it where it's like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And then all of a sudden there becomes this empowerment. If you hold on long enough, you're hitting the empowerment stage where it's like, it almost angers you enough to say, hey, I'm going to make sure this happens to nobody else. Ever.
Right.
Again.
Well, Jay, I want to quickly, I don't know if we did yet, and I see he's in here now.
Yes.
Brother Chris Hallett. How are you? We've mentioned your name.
And what's up, brother?
Yo, my bro, Hallett. Thanks for joining us, brother. I see we're all on tonight. That's exciting. Yeah, hey,
I love you, man.
Yeah, I love you too. And I see there's a plaque behind you. And I don't know if there's one directly behind your head, but I counted 12 there. That's my lucky number. So I know everything is going to go great tonight. I can feel it anyway.
Yeah. Just got a brand new one.
Yes.
Well, keep them coming. Thanks for all you guys are doing. This is impressive.
And I'm going to ask Chris Chris, were you able to make it down there to Georgia? I didn't know if you were or to one of the rallies down there. I know there was one also in DC, but I know that you had a bunch of different paperwork going through, so you might have been busy with that.
Yeah, actually, what had happened was I had my go bag packed. I was ready to walk out the door. 3:30 Friday afternoon, I got the request that they wanted to see legislation on the equalization of the practice and what that looks like. They said, show us. We have I've already built one as an example for them to duplicate, so they know what that is. Mm-hmm. But where does it fit in government? So they said, show us how this works in government. And basically what I did was I went in and I found a piece of our republic that was never completely constructed because of the War of 1812. And it's been kind of left hanging out there since that time period. I just went in and finished building it. That's all I did.
Wow.
And John Gentry's point, when we talk about what actually created loss prevention or risk management, depending on your interpretation of it, it's actually the bar is what created us, as irony would have it. And I reference a quote from Democracy in America from 1840. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote this. Lawyers in the United States form a power that envelops a society as a whole, penetrates into each of the classes that compose it, works in secret, acts constantly on it without its knowing, and in the end, models it to its own desires. Okay? So that's actually significant in that we've literally been dancing around what the intended purpose of management of government is since we started this. Why? Because it's always been, you've got one political party going after the other political party. It's always doom and gloom. Nobody ever measures success, right? Success is always under that radar, right? So because nobody was watching us as we were succeeding, companies devised a mechanism, whether it was out of necessity or, basically what it is loss prevention is literally that spine, that check and balance that runs right up the backside of the corporation, and everything is plugged into it. So, and that's how the corporation manages every department, everything, right? That's its mechanism. And government has been missing that. So I just walked in and said, hey, the U.S. government has a corporation. It's missing this. Mm-hmm. And they said, wait, what? They said, yeah, you're missing this. Let me show you what it is and how we protect our inherited emoluments, the seats, the CEO's chair, and what that means to public trust. Oh, wait a minute. That's consumer confidence in the private sector. So those things meet, and we can watch this by unit of measure of the stock market. Again, language they speak. So as I went in and I explained how this works and why there's no trust in government, but corporations are managing to dance all the way around government. Well, that's because government's never discussed the issue of how to protect itself, its inherited emolument. Why? Mm-hmm. Because these bar members have spent 230 years attacking it in one form or fashion or another. And the reality of that came clear when you started to re-examine stare decisis, case precedent. It's like, well, no, you can't claim good faith when you know you're violating federal law. That's Owen versus City of Independence. No, you can. And then when, in 2017, when the Hardwick case came out, no, you can't. You're not going to keep immunity if you walk into court and lie and present false evidence. And at that point, every one of us just kind of stood there and looked at each other and went, so then why the hell are you doing it? And they went, oh, Lord.
Yep.
So it was like at that point, the bar had already asked so many questions of the court. Hey, can we do this? And the court said no. So, I mean, I can see why judges are frustrated. They're from their vantage point, there's the kids going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, repetitively for 230 years. And they're just like, no, you're not there yet.
Yep.
And when we get involved in this problem that we've been involved in, well, we're in that loop-de-loop, right? Those never-ending circle of circles I like to talk about. And so we don't know what the hell is going on. So when I finally said, you know what, this is a public trust issue. And then, of course, I found the true interpretation, the true intention of the emoluments clause after reading history, the Federalist Papers. I mean, all that same research John had done. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? Look, in 2016, the people came out and said they wanted the swamp drained. And, you know, they said they want their country run like a business. Then I thought about it and I went, yeah, I remember that. And then when Trump came out with Executive Order 13781, I said, okay, that's a call to action, right? And I said, let's do it. Let's drain that swamp. And I've been working on that ever since. I mean, as far as my case is concerned, everything is unsubstantiated. You know, yeah, I don't like what happened between my ex-wife and I, and it's to the point I'm even done talking about it. I can't fix it. I can't change it. Nothing I can do about it.
Right.
On the bright side, as much of a pain in the butt it was for me, and it has been for my kids, she is still their mother.
Exactly.
Right. Amber and Stephen are not with some foster parent. They're not cooped up in some medical facility or whatever. So I said, you know what? It's time for me to take my case and put my case aside. And that's when I picked up Neely's case and said, you know what? This one spans 4 states. Mine only span 2. And I can do a whole hell of a lot more for Amber and Stephen by fighting for this mom than I can fighting against their mom, which quite frankly, there's nothing left there to argue. It's done. Mm-hmm. So that's basically why I put my case on the back burner, and I'm now using the Texas, the Utah, and now Neely's case as my big 3.
Yep.
So, and we're making progress here in Florida, which is one of the reasons why they finally came to me and said, okay, show us what this looks like on paper. Okay. Mm-hmm. You've convinced us that you know and understand how to protect the integrity of a transaction. You showed us in Utah what bad actors in court look like, so much so the court agreed with you. You know, showed them all of these things. You know, it was one thing to come out and make the allegation. It was something else to come out and say, here it is, and here's the proof of it.
Right.
To a point where they went,
when you can show it in black and white, I think that makes a big difference to them. Mm-hmm. And I know you do a lot with illustrations as well. Mm-hmm. Is there? You've got your board ready?
Right here.
Can you show us the basics of emoluments real quick?
Before we get rolling, Mason peeked in. He said thumbs up. And he wanted to say thank you to Chris and John for coming on. He's listening with his mother, enjoying it. Yeah. And he's got a little bit of a chocolate milk mustache, and he lost a tooth today. Show him real quick. There we go.
All right.
And say thank you, Chris and John.
That looks like. Say it
again. Go ahead. Say it again.
You are so welcome, big man. You are so welcome.
Just real quick before you go, say thank you. Yeah, and Chris says you're very welcome. And before you go, say, we love you, Jay and Pete and Jesse.
We love you, Jay and Pete and Jesse.
And everybody out there.
You know, hey, listen, that tooth looks like you bit into a chicken nugget or something. Is that what happened?
Yeah. No, chicken sandwich. Hold on, say that again, Pete.
But that tooth looks like a chicken nugget bite, like if you bit into a chicken nugget and lost it. Is that what happened?
No, I bited into a chicken sandwich.
Oh,
I bit into a chicken sandwich.
I was close.
It still tastes like chicken.
Right.
Awesome. And before you get into that, I know that there was one person out here who told me that if we had 3 more squares, we'd look like we were unconstitutional Hollywood squares. So that was amazing.
That's awesome.
So, Mr. Chris Hallett, I'm sure, can give us a diagram of the basics on emoluments, because emoluments runs through everything. And when
Let me set up the board.
Right, and when somebody receives a monetary value in order to do any type of ruling, number one, it's unconstitutional because of the fact it's a conflict of interest. So if we really took it all into consideration, Title 4D and Title 4E funds are a monetary amount that's being paid to the judiciary in order for a biased ruling. Well, that's an emolument. That's every case. So there's the conflict of interest in every single case.
Right. And it's actually a practice of what's called barratry, which means they're selling justice for money.
Yep.
Okay. And that is the one thing they can't do, is they cannot sell justice for money. Even the federal court has pretty much said that in so many words. So many times they're tired of the, it's like I said, the question of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Mm-hmm. So this was a basic presentation. Now, like I said, I've done this before, and I use this one because anybody who knows anything about the science of an internal combustion engine and who's ever studied, like, I think it was what, 6th or 7th grade science knows and understands this. So this is actually very applicable when it comes to how we do this. So what we have is we have two banks, and in law, this is your plaintiff, this is your respondent, and you have processes 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7. Now, one of the first questions that I get asked when I get this far is, why do we have an odd number or even numbers on one side and odd numbers on the other? The answer is, when you're reading American jurisprudence, there are procedures that are reserved for either side. Okay. And for example, you have the right to present a reasonable defense. Okay. So in part of first process of the respondent side, you could call that your reasonable defense. Mm-hmm. Right? You have the right to face your accuser. I mean, that seems pretty basic, but that one is primarily reserved for the respondent or the defendant, right? So that's why we place it there. And I went through and I showed that there are these processes are laid out the way they're laid out by the forefathers to maintain an integrity of the actual law itself. So when we ask where did the law fit, well, the law is right here in the middle of it. So when we talk about using time, okay, we have 5, 7, and 2. So what we do is, in the science, you would think that the clock would go clockwise. Actually, in this particular science, it actually goes counterclockwise. Okay, the actual thing goes backwards, and this as it's created, okay, looks. Oh, let's see, 1, 3, yeah, 1, 3. So we got. Now, when this is written like this, and every one of these processes, okay, runs through 1 and 8, 4 and 3, 6 and 5, and 7 and 2, okay, paired together, those are compatible processes, right? 1 and 8 are your compatible processes. Number 8 is, for example, that was the, the initial affidavit of truth, right? Now, well, why is it number 8 instead of number 1? Because it's connected directly to your reasonable defense. In law, you have the first right to face your accuser, right? That's your first right. So, I don't know. Can you guys still see that? Okay, I just realized that I'm looking at this bad rascal, and I'm trying to. Is that any better?
Yeah, I can kind of get a good glance and see how that really would all fit together in a diagram that would be easy to ascertain for a jury or a bunch of judicial officials to say, hey, look, here's the remedy of law, and here's how it's supposed to fit in effect, but yet it's not, because we're not following the substance of law. There's something here. It's like the and I'm getting a little bit of feedback from someone here, but it looks like it's one of those Sesame Street things where something in here does not fit, you know?
Right.
And it's one of those pictures, and if something's not right in there, and they're trying to shove it in there, it's not going to work how law was meant to work.
Correct. So when I showed them that this is the example of a science that is tested, and why the integrity of the law is maintained, and the integrity of every one of these transactions is maintained, because in order to get through the transaction, you have to go through the law first, right? You can't get from one side to the other without going through the law and or a rule. That's the reason it works so well.
That's exactly right.
And when I showed them, based on my analysis of what's actually gone on through the cases that I've worked only, right? This is just, when I say my big 3, this is exactly what I showed them, and this is how I was able to explain to them where the integrity of the process fails, right? So we go back to the both sides. We have the plaintiff, we have the respondent, okay? And we have the processes here, but the processes based on the law is still here in the middle, okay? However, these processes are not in admiralty jurisdiction. They're not based in that science. They have rewritten these processes, numbering them in order 6, 7, and 8. Okay? So the time mechanism 6, 7, and 8 looks nothing like what American jurisprudence says, to say nothing of the fact they're going based off of a clockwise. Actually, I had that backwards. Yeah, that's actually a clockwise mechanism. Okay, so because that's clockwise, here's what I showed them. This process, based on these guidance documents, it ain't even connected to the law. And they said, what do you mean? I said, follow this through. And when I showed them this and said, they're going right around the law. So, for example, when we talk about, well, how are they usurping the law? Well, in many of our cases, look at 18 USC 1621. Somebody walked into court and lied. Well, gee, yeah, I'm shocked about that. So there's the original usurpation. That's where the wheels come off of the wagon. Every single case.
Right. That sounds like what it is. And what we got is somebody who's coming or walking into court. Let's say you've got an ex that's walking into court, and she comes in and accuses you of abusing the child. So then we're usurping what the law actually should be, because if you're abusing your child, that should have been done, or if you are abusing your ex, that should have been done within a criminal jurisdiction. So therefore, bypassing a jurisdiction to get to another jurisdiction, which is allowing that whole process to pass right around.
Right. So what it is every one of these processes, they're not using it based in law. It's not even connected to the law. They were using policies and procedures. That's what we call it in the private sector. In the public sector, they're called guidance documents.
Mm-hmm.
They have been effectively running the entire judicial process on guidance documents.
Right.
I was able to show that. I was able to prove that on more than one occasion. Again, with my big three.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want to kind of clarify that for me, because the way you did this tonight, I think is a little different, and it really struck home for me.
mm-hmm.
So the process should be, okay, there's an allegation. So then there should be cross-examination, there should be evidence, all of these things that are part of the normal process.
Right.
But instead of that, they go from step 1 to step 2, which is
right.
take
1,
it
2,
all
3,
the
4.
way, and
Right. You don't get a chance to present a defense. They go right from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 as many times as it takes to screw you up and mess with your head is as many loops as they will run you through.
Yes.
Right.
And the more loops they run you through, the faster this time wheel will go.
Yeah,
So
Jesse,
the
go ahead.
faster the time wheel goes, the more confused you are. So when you come out of this thing, if you ever do come out of this thing, and chances are they've actually designed it to where they start you right back from the beginning again,
Mm-hmm.
right? There ain't no end in sight for it.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why, and I was able to, like I said, I can clearly demonstrate it, that when they take and they run you through these processes, and the reason that people don't recognize them is because people have no clue what policy is. Why? Their policy is their policy. If you ask to review their policy, they say, oh, we have a right to privacy. You can't read that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jesse, I think I think Jesse had a question for you real quick. Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much a question as
Yeah.
so I actually identified this a case of perjury with my husband's ex-wife's attorney, Charles D. Hinton. I went to the Pasco County here in Florida, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. I showed them the perjury. I showed them the documents. I showed them the actual transcripts and the motions of his wording. They looked at me a little bit crazy at the first, about the first 5 minutes.
Right.
And then when the detective came out and I actually spelled it out for him, they actually gave me a little bit of time and acknowledged what I was saying and took a police report and gave me a case number. But at the end of the day, they still dismissed the perjury, even though it was clear, blatant perjury, to the point where I was able to get a detective to take a report from me.
Right.
But not prosecute.
And here's why. And this is where the police are still confused, right? The attorneys, the bar, the monopoly, has been telling them that this is a civil matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's protected, right? They have protected themselves through legislation, and they call that, they hide behind checks and
Balances, yep.
balances, right? So they say, well, until this process is done, you can't review it. We're protected by checks and balances. We're our own branch. Right.
Yeah, that's correct. They are protected by checks and balances. All right, checks
From
pay
Title 40 funding.
Right, pay their salaries.
And I said checks and mate. And here's one of the reasons why I was able to get through this is because I pointed out one of the reasons they're walking off with so much money and there's no record of the transaction, because the way the systems are written and the way the algorithms and the transactions go, transactions, they have, and John can back me up on this, transactions have a beginning and they have an ending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you cannot audit this transaction until you get to the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they've done is they've even taken the transaction and looped it. So every one of these suckers, it's all in the same transaction. It's all one, right? It's all in the same action. So it never ends, right? It's just a constant flow. And they hide behind, oh, you can't check on that yet because we're not done. And they're calling that hiding behind checks and balances. And also, let's see, there was the other one, checks and balances, and that's not sovereign immunity. What was the other thing they called it? The 3 separate branches are separation of
powers. Yep.
Okay. They call, when they hide behind this one, this is when they really get serious, right?
Or really expose themselves.
Because when they show this, and they call this civil, right? This is a civil transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement can't touch a civil transaction. Why? Because the policy or guidance documents says they can't. That's not what the law says, right? So when we walk in and we say, well, the law says blah, 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 they're not looking at the law. They're looking at the policy. Why? Because this is the stuff that they can get prosecuted for based on the policy. Well, who writes the policy?
The bar. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Chris, here's the one I'm going to ask you as well, because I think it's yeah, I'll go ahead and do that here in a second here, John. And what I was going to say as well is the problem here with the bar itself is that what they're doing is, if something is unconstitutional and it does not fit in law, what the Bar Association, especially in Illinois, has been doing is they control the legislative body, and they say, I'm going to pay this legislator in order to enact this state statute because it violates the Constitution. And so that's where you're going to get into a lot of issues and a lot of problems where statutes do not represent constitutional law. And that's the problem that we seem to be having in a lot of these courts is we have state statutes that are not representing law. For one instance, I know I can tell you of, John, I know that you want to show something as well. And I would say that what you talked about, your very first thing that you want to do with the U.S. Supreme Court case is a trial by jury. Every single state has within their constitution of their Bill of Rights, the right to a trial by jury is innate.
Right.
But and the federal constitution states that as well. But yet statutes are their little statutes say, oh, well, we're not going to allow this because it's a civil case.
Correct.
Well, that's not constitutional law. It needs to be absolutely abolished.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That process, right? And that's why you're hearing it called a process, not a law, right? And every time they use the word process, they're talking about their process. It's got nothing to do with you. So how the hell are they using their process to govern you? Well, in Congress, there's a person called a parliamentarian. Now, this is where they're getting their bad advice. The parliamentarian says, well, yeah, you can prosecute somebody for this, and this, right? So when you listen to some of these congressional hearings and they say basically, wait a minute, you want us to prosecute people for not exercising their rights. You know who gave them that advice was the parliamentarian. Well, who's the parliamentarian? That's the guy we declared independence from. So basically what they've been doing is Congress has been asking somebody getting prosecutorial or legal advice from the very same guy we told to kiss our butts in the 1700s.
Right.
How do you think that now you kind of have a clear understanding why we came full circle, because it all boils down to the bar only knowing and understanding one word. Oops. A torn. That's all they know how to do.
Yep.
That's it. That's their word. I'm a torn. And that attornment process we reserved in our law for one reason and one reason only. Criminal behavior beyond reasonable doubt. Period.
Yep.
Okay. So when Clinton started what was called the expansion of prosecutorial discretion, okay, to include civil, but oh, by the way, we're not going to tell the police that, because if we tell them that, that means they can come after us, right? We're going to tell them they're still beyond reasonable doubt, and we're going to hide all of the rest of these processes. Remember the loop-to-loop-to-loops?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hide all these processes. We're not going to tell anybody what those are, which is one of the reasons why Jason Chaffetz actually got frustrated in multiple committee meetings when he said, hey, I want to see the guidance. I want to see the policy documents of how you're doing this. I'm starting to get complaints from my constituency, and that's why we're seeing all of the problems with the Department of Justice that we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Department of Justice, bar members, went in and said, well, we're going to write this policy however we want. Why? Because we have a monopoly over government. Yeah. Guess what? That was the one thing I said you can't do, and the Supreme Court said you can't do, is you can't hold a monopoly. So ironically, now we're back to the monopoly argument. So
Absolutely. I'm going to put you on mute here for just a second here while I ask John. I know that there was something that you definitely wanted to say about how we got here to begin with, because we have these issues here. How did we get to this point in time where they're allowing, where the bar is being allowed to run rampant like a criminal organization?
So there's a really great book I read. It's called The Fraternity, Lawyers and Judges in Collusion. And it was written by the Honorable Judge John Fitzgerald Malloy. And he's one of the few members of the judiciary that I respectfully refer to as the Honorable Judge. Mm-hmm. He wrote a book. And he states it right in the preface of it, that this is a confession about the legal profession, and he's advocating for reform of the legal profession. And Judge Malloy, by the way, he wrote the Miranda rights opinion. He was an Arizona appellate court judge. He was the son of an attorney, and he wrote the Miranda rights opinion, which is, a fundamental part of our due process in criminal actions. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can't be used against you. So, very respected member of the judiciary. His book was endorsed by Senator John McCain, other dignitaries from other countries, as well as other federal legislators, other congressmen. And he said in 1947, 49, in his father's practice, it built on the client's ability to pay, whether they achieved success for the client, and what the client thought they should pay. And that's a fair billing process that we still see in a lot of professions today. Mm-hmm. By the 1960s, the legal profession introduced the time is money concept and that's where we get, when you call an attorney now, they hit the clock and they bill in 6-minute increments, which is tenths of an hour. And Judge Malloy wrote, and the time that it took to get things done extended wondrously. Oh, yes, wondrously. And as a result of that, what they did is they complicated the process by creating rules of procedure. That stuff in the 40s wasn't there. And they did that. And Judge Malloy said to make less what laypersons could do for themselves. Chris, that's part of the monopoly that you were talking about.
Yes, it is.
They monopolized the process by introducing rules of procedure to make it difficult to handle a case on your own, and to generate billable hours. That was the beginning of the process. So then, they make things about as complicated as they can through rules of procedure. So then, like, okay, now how are we gonna make more money, guys? Well, let's come up with some new torts. Let's create slip and fall. Let's create product liability. Let's create all these things that we can sue people for. And the judges, in collusion with the bar, are more than happy, because when they leave the bench, they're going to get put on retainer from these law firms. Hey, Judge so-and-so, I hear your son's going through law school. We got a good job for him. There's like tons of things that they do to bring these judges into collusion with them. And so these judges say, oh yeah, slip and fall. Oh yeah, product liability. And, and honestly, I mean, there's some things about product liability that I think are good. But there's a lot of it that's just crap, that it's just a means to extort money from businesses, which is harmful. It's harmful to the country. It's extortion under color of law, many of these things. So when they came up with all of the new torts, which basically, and in Chris's mind, you can totally recognize this. That's a business introducing a new product line, isn't it?
It most certainly is.
Yeah, and so that's what they did, is they started introducing new products that they could sell in the form of new torts. So when they come up with all the rules and all the torts that they can do, hey guys, how are we going to make more money? Well, I know, we'll stop enforcing perjury statutes. We'll start introducing vexatious litigation. We'll start creating conflict where there need not be any. Let's start taking advantage of a hurt spouse who's brokenhearted that the other spouse wants a divorce, and let's weaponize that and give them the means to harm the person who has broken their heart. And through that, we'll start suborning perjury from them, and we'll start complicating this process. The judges are all like, hey, this is great. Let's make more money for my buddies. So what the judges typically will do is they'll rule with the party that they know is wrong, the party that they know is abusive, because they know the other person is going to fight like hell for their custody, for their property, and they know that that person is not going to give up. So the judges, in collusion with the attorneys, will side with the party that's in the wrong, knowing the other person is going to fight their ass off. So then, okay, now we're starting to violate rights. What are we going to do? Well, let's infiltrate the legislature. Let's get some bar members in the legislature, and we'll start enacting laws that protect this corruption.
Yep, and that's where you're going to start having some issues, because then you've got the separation of the powers to deal with, and unfortunately they're not doing it here. But we will have to wrap it up for this evening. But we want to definitely thank John Gentry, and we definitely want to thank Chris Hallett as well for coming on. You guys do Kirk's Law Corner every Monday night. What time is that, guys?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Eastern Standard Time, and I believe the drill. It gets earlier and earlier the further west you go.
Yep, absolutely. And they do an amazing job along with Kirk Pendergrass. If you have not checked them out, or you have not checked out Kirk's Law Corner, please do. It's an amazing resource. Will allow you to gain a larger understanding of how this whole thing is put together, and how there are so many intrusions within your daily life that the government, unfortunately, is allowing to take place, and that we, the people, need to start taking back and calling out their unconstitutional statutes and things going forth. So thank you guys very much for coming on. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. I greatly see you. I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, Brother Hallett. Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Thanks for coming on. I concur with Jay. Both of you, fantastic. Jay, well said. And again, guys, thank you so much. It's been enlightening, educational. And as always, Brother Hallett, keep it up. And Mr. Gentry, I'll be watching. Thank you again, guys.
You betcha. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Salud.
Good work.
Salud.
All right, here. Going to go ahead and get in here very, very quickly to our next hour of the process here, because we are rolling on. So this gives us an opportunity right now, obviously, to roll into our calendar of events and our birthdays. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and put a speaker view out here. So Mr. Peter McNeil, take it away, my brother.
Take it away, Pete.
I didn't get the memo.
You didn't get the memo?
Oh, my.
Imagine me not being on top of anything.
All right, guys.
All right, everybody. Okay, for events, let's see what we got here. April 2nd, Monday. Fools No More rally, Kansas State Capitol from 1 to 3 p.m. See Jennifer Wynn for more details. April 27th, Friday, Parental Alienation Awareness Conference, 7 a.m. at the Zemzem Shrine Club. See Rita Marie Daly for more details. July 4th, one of my favorite days. Million Parent March, Washington, D.C. Please see Eric Sinderman for more details. Okay. Birthdays, one of my favorite parts. Okay, here we go. Today, Christine Palatine, Francis Tony, Jamie Lee, Brian Mill, Michael Kringle. And for Wednesday, we have Jennifer Wynn, Tanya York, Madeline Morehouse, Jody McGregor, Lee Ann Miller. And for Thursday, we have Kerry Wood Steele, Barbara Sailors. Gotcha. All right. Kerry Van Ziel and Kirsten Pugh. Friday, we have Trudy Mae Woods, Derek Jager, Jill Short, John Youngman, and Mike Ramies. Could be saying that right. Saturday, Thomas Falais. Let's rip this off. Marianne Hinkle, Sherry Brzezinski, Chris McCraney, and Dan Dressen. Sunday, we have Jennifer Ann Miller, Varick Barton, Aaron Rath, Linda Nelson, Sarah Beth, Matthew Black, Sammy Lynn, Christian Stahl. I hope I said that right. Monday, we have Jen Johnson, James Baker, Beth Pierre, Barry Cohen. Oh, I think I know a Barry Cohen, somewhere along the line. Amelia Broths, and Carl Mitchum. I want to wish everybody a happy birthday from the Far From Normal radio show. Enjoy it. God bless. Many more. And I hope to meet you all someday at the Million Parent March.
Awesome
Wrap
stuff.
it up.
Great job, my brother.
Great
And so
job.
we are going to get here into the second hour very, very quickly. Want to thank you for doing that. Amazing stuff out there. So
Yeah, great. Real quick, Jay, I want to say great job, Pete. One of the most fun parts for Jay and I, again, is watching Pete, because there's always one name that gets you. It's always, very rarely has. And I think, Jay, if you went back out of the 50 whatever shows we've done or whatever it is, there might be one where it was seamless. It rarely happens, Pete. You're getting better and better. Happy birthday to everybody out there. Make it your day. It's your day. It's the day the world changed because you came into it. Happy birthday, chins up. Second half, Jay. Let's go.
Absolutely. And if you've got something to add to the calendar of events that you would like us to announce, or a birthday that you would like us to announce live on the air, maybe you've got a young one there that you'd like to say happy birthday to live on the air, we would be happy to do this. Please just send us a line at the Far From Normal Radio Show at gmail.com.
Absolutely. Love to. We love that, Jay.
Have you ever felt? Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
And we are back on the Far From Normal Radio Show. And I am back with my co-host, Mr. Bud Vino. Bud, how are you doing in this second half?
Yo, and yo, my brother Jay Money Moss. March 27th, Tuesday, 2018, second half. We're a little bit into the second half. And Jay, to answer your question, I am absolutely fantastic as usual. Absolutely awesome. And I want to say quickly, we are joined again by Pete McNeil. And I've got to say, the hidden secret is Pete more than multitask, because we encourage, he gets calls from his son during the show and he takes them, which we love, and he comes right back in. A lot of people don't know. So he's doing a lot of different things, a lot of, hats off to Pete. And we also have Jay from Florida, who is fired up. We've already heard from her, and we're going to hear from her more in the second half. Jesse Awana. Hi, Jess.
I don't know if, because I only caught the end of it, was the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting event on May 20th in Washington, D.C. Was that shared on the events?
I believe it was. Maybe it was not. I don't know. But yes, definitely May the 20th. Yeah,
if not, it is now. Definitely.
Yes,
Thank you, Jess.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be going to that. If anybody wants to meet up, or if I get enough people and I can drive from Florida along the way to DC, I have a passenger vehicle. Let me know.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So that will get some people there, and it's amazing. I know it's going to be an amazing time because Mark's an amazing guy. And I think that there's going to be some more coming out with that. And I will say this, I like the direction that it's going, because for so long we've talked about how we do protests. And protests, we understand that we've done those for 20 years. We've just done it. And we've been there, we've done that, we've shown our aggression, our anger. It hasn't greatly worked out. And I don't mean to say anything bad about the past, because the past is the past, and we just learn, we evolve, and now we've evolved to the point where we understand we can't maybe throw some insults or hurl insults to the same people that we're asking for their votes and their support from. So. Well,
also, I think the other side of that, Jay, it's not a secret, among other pages, I was far from normal. I'm involved with, the Florida Fathers' Rights Movement and alimony reform and things of that nature. What I see and what's really disappointing is the fact that I talk to thousands of fathers, predominantly fathers. Mm-hmm. We really need you guys to start to come together. You know how these kids organize these marches and had marches all over the place within days. This is what we need our parents to do. We need you guys to get yourselves together, reach out to somebody, and get to wherever these marches are we have to do, because until we can build that camaraderie, until we can show the world that we're really serious about this, they're not going to take us seriously. What Chris is doing behind the scenes is only going to last so long. We need those voices out there in the community being loud. If these women can get hundreds of thousands of them wearing these ridiculous, disgusting hats, where are our parents? Where are you guys? Get out from behind the keyboard. It's time to take action.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
This is why we love her. And the likelihood is high I'll be in Washington. I'll say that. I definitely agree with Jesse. We need to stop, and you, Jay, with, we're finding solutions now and taking action. That's what it's about, showing up, feet on the ground. And so I'm definitely, the percentage is very, very high that I'll be there. And I'm excited. I told Mark, I can't wait to give him a hug and give him a kiss right on the cheek. You can best bet. And he's doing amazing work. And it's overwhelming. I know he's inundated. As we all know. And so, again, hats off to Mark. He's doing really, the only thing I can think of, whatever you believe, I believe God's work. I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will agree with you. And if I can get there, I definitely will. I think for me, it's just a matter of, I know that my court issues are still coming up, and I always tend to have that issue where I want to go to something and my court date ends up being the same exact day, and and it's just it's my luck. But
that's the only
gonna be there.
Yeah, that's the only hindrance I would have is I may have court, as you know, Jay, around that that time, but I wouldn't think the courts aren't too efficient, so I don't think we'll have to worry about that. So. No, I'm excited about to see everybody down there coming together, and this is going to be monumental. I firmly believe that.
I do as well, because of the backing that I know that Mark has. I know that Mark has so much backing from our team and from our board of directors, which I'll say as well. Amazing first board meeting that we had this weekend.
Absolutely.
It could not have gone better. We came together and everybody was majorly supportive of the direction that we're going and what we're going to be able to obtain and do going forward. I think it's going to be amazing. We're very supportive people, all wanting to come together and do the right thing, because we all know in this, we really have come to the conclusion that this is not necessarily about us. It's for the future generations, that they never have to go through what we had to. Could we affect some things today? And it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. But this is really for our children and our children's children and their children going forward, and that they never have to experience this stuff. So I'm greatly encouraged when I see some of that stuff. What I don't like to see is some of the backbiting or some of the nonsensical stuff that's in the movement. And quite frankly, I'm like you, bud. I just tune it out anymore.
Zero energy, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because you're seeing that exactly, Pete, right? Pete, first of all, I love talking to Pete, and we spoke today, and it's just all positivity. I mean, Pete's rolling. Mm-hmm. I won't even get into it too much, except Pete and I can smile and wink and go, brother, crystal ball, right, Pete? We can see the future because, again, you just keep with the truth. You keep with love and the truth. Tunnel vision, Jackson Robinson, right? Just stay focused on the finish, and you'll get there, as Jesse said, with action. And it was great having Mr. Gentry and Mr. Hallett on earlier in the show because, again, it's application. And I know Kirk's Law Corner was mentioned. I know Kirk does tireless work. And this is the sort of thing, the different contrasts in the movement that are needed, the different sort of areas of expertise, the different voices. That's how, when you blend it all together, that's why, as Jay said, the infighting and the backfighting, it's absolutely useless. It's nothing but a hindrance, and it's more than a waste of time. It doesn't even make sense.
It's not going to get
Again, go ahead, Pete.
No, I'm sorry. It's not going to get anybody anywhere, and it's just tireless efforts for what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the bottom line is that, people need to focus on the kids, and it's unfortunate that parents don't understand that this can all end so seriously, and probably we wouldn't even exist if parents would get along and keep the courts out of their business and raise the children with both parents. Mark is not asking for nothing out of the norm. That's why he's making such headway. He's asking for equality, 50-50 shared parenting. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's what society needs today. Just in general, they need both parents. And the problem is a lot of parents are scorned on one side and not the other over the marriage or whatever the differences are, but they're not being adults when they have to put their differences aside and think about your future, which is your child.
Right, and that's exactly right. And Jesse, I know you summed it up because I brought forth something today that caught my eye. I saw there was a retired Supreme Court justice. A Supreme Court justice who said
Here we go.
Thinks it's a great idea to ban the Second Amendment, and I kept thinking to myself, the problem.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yep.
Sorry, guys.
The problem with banning the Second Amendment is, where do you stop banning amendments?
The problem that I have, because I read that article, and as soon as I read the headline, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, seriously.
Like my stepdad in Weston Heaven, Gordon Baker, used to say, from my cold dead hand.
Yep.
So here's my problem with that. We have a Supreme Court justice who took an oath to uphold the constitutional rights of the American people
Mm-hmm.
openly, purposefully, and loudly, and widespread media say that these rights should now be infringed upon and repealed. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me?
Right, and that leads us into a whole nother realm and a whole nother conversation where we're talking about, okay, if they're okay with infringing upon the Second Amendment rights, then probably they were okay infringing upon people's rights all along while they were Supreme Court justice.
Yes.
That should tell you some things.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Especially, we in conversation tonight with our guests, I could see how the convolution maybe could have taken place over the years, a distortion of the law and the policy, and actually, what is the parental rights? Is parental rights just decision making? Is that time sharing? So to be strength based, because I am a social worker, let's but no.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not. These
right.
people blatantly distort the law and whatever you want to call it to fit their means to the end that they want to receive. And after I read that article, there was no cloudiness for me.
Yeah,
at all.
And this is like, has anybody ever seen the movie called Big Daddy with Adam
Allison and Mason love that, yeah.
And what I see law as today is that little kid that says, this is the game of I win. And it's, I adjust the rules to make sure that I win in the end. And that's what we're seeing here a lot of the times is they have to win no matter what. And so it reminds me the laws.
Yeah, Jay, it reminds me, I was watching, again, I referenced Family Guy last week too, but it reminds me of there's a scene in there where there's a gentleman sitting with a jackass or something. I don't even know what it is, but he says, Kevin Bacon was in Footloose. He said, no, he wasn't. Or something like that. And then it's all you just with all this. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, when the person, he doesn't want to hear what the person has to say anymore. It reminds me of that. Just completely be obvious. And we go, what are you talking about? Of course Kevin Bacon was in Footloose. No, he wasn't. You lose. Yeah, what?
Exactly.
No, sorry.
Right. And I think it's just, honestly, it's self-serving, and you get to the point where you're in this movement. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, Bud and I, and I'm sure Pete has gotten to this point because he's even told me before, where you just kind of, you see so many things going on within the movement, and you just throw your hands up and go, wow, should I even still be doing this, or should I not? Because it doesn't, we don't know sometimes, but then it's that call, Bud, that call that we get that says, hey, I listened to the show and listened to you guys, and I was about ready to commit suicide when I was listening to you guys, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I can go one more week. And then the next week it was one more week. And the next week it was one more week. And that's why we do what we do here, is to empower you.
Yeah. Absolutely, Jay. Well said. And I want to say this. I'm glad, Jay, that you went back to this a little bit. Because I wanted to speak on that and just, some of the negativity and the going back and forth. I will say this to people. This is a very emotional thing to go through this. The wonderful thing about the board meeting too, which I'll kind of regress a little back and talk about that, is I really get to know certain people a little better. Chad Loudermilk. We got to speak with Jesse West, Aaron Wemple a little more. And in speaking with them, we talked about that emotional, just how emotional it is and how draining it is. So that being said, I implore people, sometimes when we're hurting, we want to find some sort of an outlet. We're hurting. We sometimes want to hurt, I guess, simply put. I would implore people to breathe, step back and say, is this going to help me? In the end, look long-term. How is this, be a little selfish now. How is this going to benefit me? Be selfish in that way. And again, breathe, because it is emotional. Step back sometimes. And even Jay and I, as Jay mentioned, and Pete and Jesse, all of us sometimes, we're all human. We all sometimes have to step back We have to breathe. We're not all invincible. We all hurt, and this hurts when you don't have your children. It's the most immense and worst pain there is, and it's if you can get through it, which is so hard. And as Jay said, we've taken this isn't self-aggrandizing. We've taken a lot more than one or two suicide calls that we've even referred to each other at 3 a.m. Hey man, I got a call. And I know Jesse takes a lot, and Pete's taken a lot too, and more and more. And that's what it is, Jay. When it gets frustrating, that's the sort of thing that puts you back on course. Find something, some sort of an outlet, something that you enjoy. I think too, Jay and Jesse and Pete, we get in these ruts where we don't even know how to enjoy anymore. We feel guilty for laughing. We feel guilty for smiling. We feel guilty for feeling good. And that you can't. You got to keep with that positive energy. You can't. The negative won't help because the positive, it'll bring positive in. Believe me. Sometimes it seems easier said than done, but it's practice, just like a diet. You got to stick with it.
Exactly.
It's not always going to come right away either. You know what I mean? You got to keep at it, like you're saying. But I agree with you. Right. Piggyback off what you're saying. It's not like, oh, I'm going to change today and all this positivity is going to come to me. No, you have to keep that positive cloud above your head. Just like you bring that black cloud of negative energy and you're so miserable and you break out of that, and soon enough, it's like it's going to come to you naturally. And things all that negative is going to bounce right off of you.
Pete, well said. I'm glad you said that because, and I've said this before, Jay can attest to this too, is, it takes us, especially in this movement and the type of people, society in this world, a lot of us are very negative, and we have become that way. We're not born that way, and it's over years, whether it was our upbringing, whatever it is. My point is, I've said this to Jay on the air too, even when it was just he and I, it's much like a diet, a physical diet. You've got to stick with it, and a lot of times we're instant gratification society too, so when it doesn't work overnight, we quit. And what it is as many years as it took us to get to this negative place, it's going to take just as much work to get us out of it. Those negative thoughts, you've got to literally replace them. Nope. As hard as it is, because it's easy to go back to that negative. That comfortable doesn't mean it's happy, but it's comfortable. And you want to break out of that rut. That's how you do it. You stop yourself. You stop yourself from going back and forth with someone. That's how you get stronger too. When you do it, Jay, right? It becomes easier and you get excited. Wow. And then all the positivity, right, Pete? It starts coming in. It's amazing to see. Absolutely. That's how it's done.
It's like when you're out there looking for a job and you can't find a job and you apply to like 10, 15 places, and a couple months later, one place calls you and you're like, oh, okay, you're thinking about taking it. Next thing you know, 12 other places call you. Like, right. Oh my God. Now you have that's the way it's gonna happen. It's gonna come to you.
Yep. Good things come to those people that believe it. Mm-hmm.
And quickly, I want to say too, in that what we were just speaking about is, it will all of a sudden you will find, and pretty quickly, right, is you'll find that when you're going to a negative place, you'll start to go positive without having to think about it, and you'll realize we go, wow, whoa, that, and then you'll start to get clarity when you start to get rid of all those egoic traits, those that jealousy, that whatever it is, anger. Reach that level of true self-actualization, right? The level that Bruce Lee always talked about, that people always try to reach, these deep thinkers, that is not just discovering who you are, but trying to eliminate all those sort of negative traits, those weak traits, jealousy, anger, rage. We're all human. But if you can contain that, you can master anything. If you can master this, there's no one that can beat you. It's absolutely impossible. Be strong here and hear it. And as it rolls, it'll get easier and easier, and then untouchable.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. Wanted to give Jessie an opportunity because I know she was about ready to ask or give us a statement here.
Absolutely.
A statement about what?
We lost her train of thought already.
I've put up on the Florida Fathers' Rights Movement this past week 2 fathers that we've lost this week alone, and these are the ones that we know, that are brought to us. And then another dad who I spoke with for I don't even know how long the other day after threatening to take his life, and it's just heartbreaking to me. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking. I mean,
it is.
And Jay, what we see a lot too. What's the the recurring theme, right, is we hear from people a lot. It's, obviously they're sad, but they don't think much of themselves anymore.
Right.
And that's the problem. I'm this, I'm shit, I'm that. And that's the problem, because you can't expect, and I've said it too before, if you go into a restaurant, think of the waitress's or the waiter as wife. If they come to the table, wife or the waitress or waiter, and says, hey, what would you like? And you say, screw you. Get out of here. What kind of service do you think you're going to get? Think of that as life. What kind of service are you going to get back from life if you're putting that negative out there and saying screw you to everybody and trying to break everybody down? Happy people don't cut others down, right, guys? They only attempt to build them up. Doesn't mean you can't get emotional, but contain that. Do what's best for you and for your kids, ultimately, most importantly.
That's what you always got to think about. I always say, and Bud, correct me if I'm wrong. You can help me out here. You chime in. One, you always got to have a good support team. You have to, whether it's friends, family, or people on Facebook, get rid of the negative energy. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's in your Facebook crew or even in your street crew, it doesn't matter. Get rid of it. You can't have that negative energy. And always think about what should have been number one, but always think about your children. Who's going to fight for them if you're gone?
Exactly.
Right.
Who's going to defend them? Who's going to, everything that you think in your mind that you want to fight for, that you want the best for your child, who's going to do that when you're gone? There ain't going to be nobody to take your place. That's it.
Absolutely, Pete. And I always think of this too, right, guys, is would I be proud for my child to see my actions? Mm-hmm. Would I be proud that they were watching this and seeing how I was conducting myself? And that's really, that'll stop you in your tracks. Children, generally, right, guys, they don't do what they're told. A lot of times they do what they see. Mm-hmm. So people can, that's a lot of times, I don't understand. I always tell, my kid not to hit, but, I beat the shit out of my kids. But, you know what I mean? And that's not me. I just mean in the sense of, I don't understand why they hit. I hit them all the time. Whatever someone's disciplinary, practices are, that's not what I'm judging. My point is that they live what they see. And if you're conducting, that's the other thing too, is children, they emulate too, is if you walk around as a parent and you're always cutting yourself down, that's what children will, and that, if you don't think that you're their mom, you're their dad, they know they came from you. And if you're walking around saying I'm shit, if your children are with you or whatever, they feel that about themselves. It hurts them. Don't do that. Build yourself up and it'll build your children up.
Exactly. And I'll let you guys in on a little social engineering trick. This is social engineering 101. And I express this because I'm so much into studying social engineering. It's ridiculous. But
Jay enjoys that at 3 a.m. Trust me, I know.
Yes. And I'll tell you, this is what a lot of people do in order to get attention, is that they'll say something absolutely extraordinarily out of the way, rude, or in particular. You know why? They want to elicit a response from you. And that emotional response is what they thrive off of. Look, if you weren't doing this, you wouldn't be on Facebook actually trying to elicit a response. You would try to elicit a response around the people that are around you every day. Instead, you're on Facebook to the world trying to elicit a response. And that response can come to you in a very negative light sometimes. Sometimes it can come to you in a response that is slightly damaging. And sometimes there are people that are out there that if you just put the sky is blue, and the next thing you know, they're just going to tell you you're absolutely wrong, just because they're trying to elicit a response out of you. So don't buy into the response. For every action equals an opposite reaction. So what's going to happen is
Jay,
you're going to react, they're going to react, you're going to react, they're going to react, and it's going to keep going. The ball is going to keep rolling.
Right, and Jay, we say this too, and we've heard this too, is every action, doesn't require a reaction. Every time someone tries to bait you doesn't mean you have to respond. The only thing that makes us feel compelled is that insecurity, right, Jay? I can't let them think this of me, or what is it? What? Most of the time, a lot of these times, people you see going back and forth, they don't even know each other. They never will. They don't even know if they're really who they are a lot of times on Facebook. I mean, it doesn't even make much sense. Hey, it's one thing if you want to go in constructive criticism, in terms of whatever and educate people, but when you see the back and forth, and I don't sit there and look at them all, but Jay, you can go down sometimes, and it's like people will go at it for hours.
Well,
It's unreal. Go ahead, Jess.
what do you guys do when you have attorneys who are, stalking you and searching you and watching you to the point where
You smile pretty. You smile pretty for the camera.
Well, I normally get on the camera and I unbuckle my pants and I moon them. It's one of those.
Yeah.
If you're gonna watch, hey, I'm gonna give you.
Let me think about that. I'm gonna think about that for a minute. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, just blow up kisses. I mean, like it's just like blowing kisses to the judge. I mean, really, quite frankly, if you're gonna watch, I'm gonna give you a show.
That's it.
Yeah, baby. Don't you dare give me an audience. Don't give me an audience. Please don't do that.
Right. And I think it's just more generally that's my reaction on a lot of this because after my divorce, and I'm just going to bring this up, and I'm not going to really necessarily talk about my divorce. I'm going to talk about myself and my reaction to that divorce. When I went through my divorce, I went through what I don't know if it's necessarily called a mental breakdown, but it was necessarily a mental break where it was just like, I just don't care anymore what anybody thinks of me because I went through 7 years of dating a lady. I married her, was married to her for 12 years. That's 19 years with the same person that was telling me how to act, where to go, what to do. At some point in there, it just is like, hello. And some of us need to go through that little mental break where we just don't care what other people say about us. Or what does it matter? At the end of the day, they don't help you put your pair of pants on. At the end of the day, they're not cooking you dinner. What do you care what they think? Because these people on Facebook that you'll never probably ever meet in your entire life, and you're worried what their opinion is.
Right, and even if you were to meet him or if you knew him, it doesn't matter. Again, sorry, Jess, were you gonna say something?
No.
Sorry. It's unbelievable. So again, just stay focused on the finish.
Yes,
I implore everybody, and keep rolling forward. Keep moving forward, Jay.
That's exactly right. You got to envision the race that's in front of you, that long distance running race, because that's what this is. It's a long distance race. You're going to have some peaks and you're going to have some valleys that you're going to have to
breathe.
Just breathe, take it easy, and focus on the finish line.
Do something you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Take a break every now and again.
I'm just going to scroll through some of the comments real quick.
Absolutely.
As I can. But
go ahead, Pete. Good job.
Kimberly Fry says, I just want truth, justice, and freedom, and the right to take my grandchildren to the zoo, like God gives me. Everything else is a lie. Everything.
Yeah. Well, I think quickly, Kimberly. We'll give a shout out to Kimberly out there. I know she definitely is a grandparent, and we definitely support grandparents' rights as well. There's a lot of hurting grandparents out there, and it's awful because a grandparent is such a special thing for a child. That relationship is so unique and so beautiful. So we support grandparents that are hurting out there and their grandchildren. We continue to fight for you. Thank you for the comment. Keep your chin up.
My mom was a single working mom, no child support. Didn't know my dad at all, and that was by his choice. Okay, not by my mother's. And my grandmother raised. My mother was out there working. I have some of the best memories, not only just with my mom, because my mom always spent a lot of time with me, but with my grandmother. I mean, that's how I learned how to make my lasagna. That's how I learned how to make strufas. I learned a lot of stuff from grandma, So grandparents, I tell you, I'm all for the rights of grandparents, and I feel that they should have just as many rights. Listen, that's the history of your family.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The problem is that it's a third-party division of parental responsibility when you designate grandparents to have parental responsibility. And it's not that I don't support it, because I do. I was raised by my grandparents. I love my grandparents dearly. But according to constitutional law, it's the third-party designation of parental responsibilities.
Right.
Well, sure. And I think a lot of times, what I'm sorry, Jay. And I'm going to let you speak real quickly too. After when I speak quickly, I should say. I think we're talking about just too is the effects that alienation has when the parents are going through it, how it affects the grandparents too, and just how they are somewhat handcuffed in that way, just too, right?
Mhm.
So I think a lot of it is just the pain that we see, as you mentioned, Jay, with Jess, and with parents, same thing, and it's awful to see, as you mentioned, Pete. My grandmother on my mother's side, when I was real young, I was close with her. She died of cancer when I was very young, but my mammy, she was wonderful. I have very, very vivid memories of being much younger than Mason and laying on her lap in church, and just and singing with her in church, and just as you said, Pete, that I remember the Sundays on when I would go over there to chocolate sundaes and syrup and watching. I remember one time back in the day, she walked in and I was watching Three's Company. Oh, she flipped out. I never saw her so mad, but I wasn't allowed. That was when there was like 3 channels, and I'm like, what is this? I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, Three's Company back then. That was great. But yeah, it's very important.
You know what it is, like, and I feel the grandparents' frustration, and someday I'll be a grandparent too, and hopefully, we won't have to fight.
God willing, right.
The thing is that, I feel the grandparents' pain because you know why? Because they were good enough through the marriage to watch your children, and now all of a sudden that the marriage dissolved, they're not allowed to be in the kids' lives.
Right. And I think that's where
I can quickly before we go.
Yeah, that's where kind of I'm a little bit flexed on that, because I think that yes, I'm fully for parents having the full constitutional rights, but I do think that there can be something written within there that says, hey, look, maybe a 2 to 4 hour thing every other weekend that let's try and keep them included in the grandparents' life, even if the let's say you have a divorce and the father doesn't have but one night a week and every other weekend kind of thing, then it's kind of, or if they have no weekends at all, hey, look, let's try and flex the grandparents in here, because obviously we need to have some heritage on what's going on, especially when you're talking about Native Americans and their rights, or Hispanic Americans and their heritage. That's a big thing for those people who have and want to respect their heritage. To not allow a grandparent to be able to see that child, that's a big thing. Jay,
I'll just say this before we do the shoutouts. I'll just speak to my own personal alienation. When I won't get into details either, because I know we have to cut out here soon. But this is how this affects children. I remember when I was young, when my parents, or whatever you want to call them, step parents, whatever, separated. I was kept from my grandmother. I was told she was this and that and awful things because it was my mother's mother. And this is back before the internet. She used to send me letters about every week, just telling me how much she loved me. I would not respond because I had to show that I couldn't stand her. I had to stay loyal. Yeah. That's survival as a child. And she ended up sending me letters, and I heard she had gotten cancer, and she sent me a letter, and she wasn't, she was explaining she was sick and she wanted to see me before she died. And I remember ripping the letter up, and she died. And I remember being a kid, and they had told me she died. I said, I don't care. And I went in my bedroom and I cried and cried. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think that affected me, I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. And I visited her grave in Brookline, New Hampshire many times by myself since. So don't do that to your kids. Don't do that. Be better than that.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to get into our final little bit here of the show, where we always give our amazing shout outs. I'm not trying to pump you back up, Mr. Budvino, because you are ready to roll.
Rock. Okay, first of all, Mr. Mark Ludwig, Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. Ed Bryant out there in the New Hampshire chapter. I help him out there. It's wonderful. Yep. Also, Kevin Moran, my brother Moran, Kevin Moran, and Fanny. People like Lori Parr, Brook Village Crew, Sharon Novak, Sharon Gray, my brother Brian Peasley, who I had a nice long conversation with last night. Brian's very, very deep. Amazing guy. I've known him for about 30 plus years. Obviously, Pete J, Jesse Weiner, our guests, John Gentry, Chris Hallett, thank you very much. Everybody out there, and also to my wife, Allison, as usual, I love you. And she tortured me tonight. In the middle of the show, she brought me in a burger, and I was trying to cut out so I could eat. I could smell it, and it's yelling at me to eat it. And so I'm gonna when I got here. And to my littlest bestest buddy who joined us briefly, I was so excited when I paused and went out. He was so happy to be on the air. I love you, littlest bestest buddy Mason. And to my biggest bestest buddy Kari, he had fencing class tonight, and I know he enjoys that. I'm gonna be seeing him do that soon. I love you, biggest bestest, and I'll talk to you later tonight or in the morning. Love you guys. Chins up. It's not over until you say it's over. Keep fighting. Keep fighting.
And he gets the whip again. All right. So,
Yeah. Woo.
Jesse Weiner.
Wakes me up every time.
So to each and every parent out there fighting, continue the good fight. Please reach out to us. We may be busy. We may be, in multiple places, but we will get to you. Message me. I don't care date or time. I go from 3 in the morning until 10:30 at night. Reach out to me. I'm always available. To the individuals who proceed to send my husband emails about derogatory language, defaming language, me spreading rumors about social media about them, keep on watching. I feel so special that you take 2 hours out of your day every Tuesday just to listen to me. I think that's great. Yeah.
Well, imagine I thought, what's that song? These lion eyes, are we watching you or something? We're watching you, watching you, watching you. Keep watching. Thank you for the support out there.
For sure. Just continue the good fight, guys. We're here to help you, and that's it. That's all I got.
All right, and she gets the parrot. All right,
yes,
so
whipping the feathers.
Right on in to Mr. Pete McNeil.
I'd like to give a big shout out to my FFN fam, my Facebook fam, my biological family for all the support. I get a ton of support, and I tell everybody to do the same. Surround yourself with good people that love you and care about you. And, shout out to my little man. I'll be seeing you tomorrow, hopefully with no hiccups. And pretty much that's it. Just like I said, everybody, don't give up. Don't surrender. You got to remember, it's all for your children. If you're not around, your children don't have a chance. So keep your head up. Keep up the fight. And if you need us, we are here. I'm up almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't get to you right away, I will get to you in the following morning. I only sleep a couple hours a day. So peace out, one love, chins up, like Bud says, and keep your head up above water. Don't worry, we're all here. We're in it together.
And he gets the famous horn. Yes, absolutely. So definitely want to thank Mr. John Gentry and Chris Hallett for coming on tonight. And also thanks to Kirk Pendergrass for allowing those guys to come on tonight. Definitely we'll have Kirk on in the future. Just we have so many people to get on in so little time. It's so much fun, so little time, right? In the house.
Yes.
Yeah. So we got to have so many people, but there are amazing things going on about the Far From Normal radio show. And like I said, we had our first board meeting this weekend, and let me tell you something. Again, so supportive, such great people that are doing things behind the scenes. People that are involved in some of these shared parenting bills that are actually on the board that are doing amazing stuff, writing different stuff. And look, this is the tip of the iceberg. When I say a shared parenting bill, that's only the tip of the iceberg. These people are working on other things beyond that that they haven't even let go of yet, and they're not going to until it's the right time.
Right, Jay.
We don't want to let the bar know what we're doing quite yet.
Absolutely. And one last shout out too. I meant to say to my brother John Mondu. He's had a stressful couple of days. Brother Mondu, my BBC brother, everybody in the BBC. John, keep your chin up. Everybody out there, we love you. Thank you for listening and watching.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that some of the things that we brought forth to them, and if not, I'll just reveal it, because quite frankly, we're not going to be anything but transparent here. There's a list right here that you probably can't read, but there's my notes from the meeting and on that tells you definitely we've got something behind this. We had a formula in place that's called SARSA support. And so we're going to use that action plan. It means story, anticipation, reality, surprise, and action. We're going to do all about that. We're going to put out ads more and more and more. We're going to put out T-shirts. We're going to put out different things coming forward here pretty soon to support the show, to support the movement, and do different things in anticipation of the shows, because we will have more and more famous people hopefully coming on, which we've already contacted. And when I say famous, I mean famous, very, very famous, as in famous families, should I say, that are in Hollywood.
Jay's dropping a hit. People's minds are racing. People's minds are racing. Keep those wheels turning. We're going to keep surprising you. Far from normal, baby.
So I'm telling you, stay tuned. There will be some huge, huge announcements coming forward. And we're very, very excited about it. And there's going to be just, it's going to propel a lot of the things that we're doing in these shared parenting bills forward. It's going to propel some other things coming forward that I'm not going to mention quite yet.
Jay, you're killing us.
I don't
You're
want
killing everybody else there.
Anything. I'm not letting the bar know.
Well, that's good. That's good. Keep them guessing. That keeps things spicy.
Exactly, because we know all of you bar members have nothing else better to do than to talk about the Far From Normal radio show, as well as a few judges down there in Sampson County, North Carolina. And hi, Sampson County. Just thought we'd let you know. So we say these things not to be jerks, but we say these things so that we can get through a lot of the madness that goes on.
You got to have some levity.
Yes.
You got to have some levity, boys and girls.
Exactly, because in this movement, we're all just a little far from normal. All right, guys. We love you very, very much. You are important. You are loved, and you are cared about. God bless, peeps.
Chins up. Yeah. Good night.